You'll want to set up in your grade book as you're getting it ready to get back to school is your categories. Now, categories are really important because you can put students' work in these broad bins, such as homework, tests, quizzes, group work. And if you're like me, it color codes them, which is just awesome. And even further than that, and we'll go over this next, is how to weight your categories so that your grading policy is automatically calculated. So the first thing is, a category is a broad range. It is a big idea. It is not spelling week 1, January 2015. I found that in a grade book once. My mother, who was a kindergarten teacher, went through one day and set up all her categories. Very specific. They had dates, they had everything, and in the old grade book, you couldn't get rid of categories. In the new grade book, I will show you how to deactivate categories. So think of big, broad categories: participation, coursework, classwork, whatever you want, whatever makes sense in your classroom. So we're going to go to grading. We are going to go down to categories. And you'll see that I have some here already. And if they have the little house here next to them, that means it was pushed down by your district. So these might be categories that your school expects you to use. Otherwise, you can add your own, or some districts don't have any policy on your categories. But the big ones are pretty normal. You'll probably see classwork, project, quiz, test, group project, and you can switch the order of these. So which ones come first? I am going to create a category. And I'm going to hit category. I am going to name my category participation, because that's very important. I want to give students grades for participating in class. And I want it in all my classes, not just my homeroom. I get to pick a color, my favorite part. I can add a description. Students receive 10 points up to, up to, receive up to 10 points a day for participation. Working well with others, and a positive attitude. So that's just a little description. Again, a lot of these things you can see on the parent and student portal, so make it clear. If a parent has a question, what does participation mean? You can clarify it here, and it's less phone calls and emails. I want it active. Now that I have all that, I'm going to click on the second tab. Now realize there are multiple tabs up here. So select a score type. It's going to be points. In my description, I went 10 points a day. You can also default, and this is just a default. You can always change it, but this does make your life quicker and easier. So I have a grading policy. I have 10 points a day. Ooh, I can automatically make it default to 10. I can publish immediately. Days before due date, immediately, never, or on due date. I'll have to think about that one, but I think I'm going to go immediately for now. Publish scores. Now, why would we want to publish scores? Maybe I wouldn't want to publish the score if I was keeping track of gym shoes or checking in and out books, or things that I keep in my grade book but aren't necessarily calculated in the grade, and count in final grade. Same type of things. If I'm keeping track of textbooks, I don't want that to count in the final grade. I'm just literally putting what textbook number they have. And it's in my grade book, so it's an easy place. But in this case, I am participation. We have 10 points a day, and it's going to default to these. I'm going to hit next, view all, and I can see my other categories here to make sure I'm not duplicating anything. So again, always go down to the bottom, hit save. If you do not hit save, it will not save. I now have a participation, and it's in all my classes. Now, if I ever want to go back, I can edit. So in this case, group project. I used group project last year, but in hindsight, I'm not going to use it this year, so I'm going to inactivate that, so it will not be on my list. Oh no, you say. Where did it go? How do I get it back? Maybe I do want group projects. I can always go up to this box here and show inactive. So this is nice and was not possible in the old grade book. You can now deactivate and clean up your categories. It is very critical to your long-term success this year if you clean up and think about your categories now. Because next, we're going to go to category weighting. Have fun. Now that you have your category set up, you can use your categories to weight your grades so that your grade book can reflect your grading policy. So in the next tutorial, we're going to look at the grade book and how to weight your grades. For example, you may have that homework's worth 10%, class participation is worth 50%, and tests are worth 20%, and a final exam is worth 10. You can set up your grade book to reflect this. Now that you have all your categories set up, we're going to use them. Now, it's very common to use categories for weighting to make sure that your grading policy is adhered to. So we're again going to go to settings. We're going to go to traditional grade calculations. If you use standard-based grading, that's a little different. We're going to assume that you are using traditional ABC or satisfactory, needs improvement, or some type of grade scale that is on the traditional end. And we are going to go to, let's go to our English class. So I am going to go into my semester 1. And instead of term weighting, which is fine, quarter 1, quarter 2, that's great. So quarter 1 is worth 50% of the grade and quarter 2 is worth 50. That's what I'd expect. So I'm going to go into quarter 1 here. And I'm going to set up my category weighting though. So I'm going to hit the little plus. I'm going to go to category. And very simple, I'm going to make projects worth 30% of the grade. And I'm going to make classwork worth 30% of the grade. And I'm going to make quizzes worth 10%. I'm going to make tests worth 10. So I'm at 30, 60, 70, 80. And I'm going to make my last category of participation, which is very important to me. They get 10 points a day, worth 20%. So here we go. Now that we have our full weight, you see the percent on the sides here automatically adjusts. So I should have 30, 60, 70, 80, and 20 is 100%. So it does the math for you. You do want to make sure that, and it will adjust automatically. You always have to equal 100%. So if my grading policy, which should be in my class description that I already did, is that projects are worth 30%, classwork is worth 30%, quizzes are worth 10%, tests are worth 10%, and participation is worth 20%, that's great. Now, lots of times in high school, this could be a final test. And if I wanted a final test category worth so much of the grade, this is how I would calculate that. So hopefully you understand the importance of setting up your categories and your weighting ahead of time. So you really do want to pay attention because this will drastically affect how your grades are calculated. So in this case, my category weighting will factor into my term weighting, and all my grades will match my grading policy. So take time to set that up ahead of time so that there's no confusion as you start to put in assignments.